Howdy. Here's a little song, which again, I'm working without a microphone here, so I'll keep it short and sweet just in case you're listening to pure emptiness. A little bit of musical vibration. So, talking about balance and the pendulum of balance. Basically, something I've noticed that seems to happen in the world, the universe, is like when we're out of balance, we don't, and then we move towards balance. Usually, we don't end up straight at a place of balance, or like we don't go straight to balance and stay there, and then maybe go back to where we were, and then have to come back. Usually, it's kind of like you're going like a pendulum. You know, the momentum required to bring yourself towards the center is the same momentum which will keep you going past the center. And then, but maybe, yeah, you will, then you go, oh, okay, no, back the other way. And then you start coming back that way. And basically in iterations, gradually you find center. So someone maybe is, totally, a quick example, not one of my main ones, but I got 7 examples for you. But off the top of my head, one would be like, if someone's doesn't take care of their health at all, and then they're out of balance, and then they're like, oh, I'm going to start taking care of my health, and then they're really extreme, like insanely strict with their diet, and they do that for a few months, and then they get talked into a little bit of, they're like, oh, okay, I should loosen up, and but then they go back to quite too much. It starts getting out of control again. And they're like, okay, we'll get it back in control. And they start eating healthy again. But this time they're not so insanely strict, and so but this way, and then they end up kind of being pretty balanced, so that'd be something like what we're talking about. And, Aristotle talked about virtue as like basically positive personality qualities, personality traits. And that you have for every virtue, which is kind of like a golden zone or like a middle ground, a balance point, that you have 2 vices, the vice of too much and the vice of not enough. So vice being something bad, right? So every virtue has 2 corresponding vices with a pole of excess and a pole of deficiency. So courage is good, but too much is reckless, and it's not good. And not enough courage is cowardly, and maybe, kindness is good, but too much is softness, and not enough is cruelty, so yeah, or weakness, you could say, instead of softness. So yeah, that's the idea. And I think that's kind of relevant here. This point of balance is you can go off track on 2 sides, and kind of often, you kind of naturally, it seems nature has us doing this pendulum motion. So without further ado, number 1, ambition. When I was like a teenager, I like had all these big dreams, like this, oh, okay, transform the world, do all this crazy stuff. And then some tragedy struck. Friend of ours went missing into the next dimension. So that kind of made me reassess things. And I kind of came to this conclusion that I had been too focused on the future and not focused enough on the now and just living in the present. So but then I kind of became a bohemian, and just too, reading and that kind of thing, still like learning and stuff, but a lot of just, like drinking and, playing music and just hanging out, which is great. But then I realized over time, like, oh, wait a minute, there's no forward motion. And I started to get, depressed and, and then kind of anxious. So you're trying to hide these feelings and just unsure of yourself, or I think, if you're not developing, then maybe, brings all kinds of funk into the system. But and then I eventually kind of came to realize, oh, okay, no, you need forward motion. You do, like, to be in balance, you need to be able to work and play, and so like where I'm at now is like I enjoy just enjoying the moment and just the freewheeling kind of love of being here now. But then also like I'm creating, I have dreams and I'm dreaming and trying to dream as colorfully as I can from my particular tastes, as only I can. And you would do the same for yourself. And dreaming as vividly as I can, and then kind of acting boldly upon that to make these, bring these to life and create things in the world, create experiences and expressions of, yeah. So that's it. And I think, wanting to create businesses or wanting to solve people's problems, which is what a business is doing, providing goods or services, like nouns or verbs, things or actions, which people want or need, and that's good. But someone might say, oh, the world's fucked up. What's the point? It's like, I think, or like, oh, you're greedy, that's capitalism's terrible. Like, well, look, I think, having some desires is not a bad thing. Too much desire, and then this would be another side of it, like from ambition, is like, wanting things can cause problems, but not wanting anything is impossible. And it will cause problems also. Like naturally, the human animal has preferences. And so when I started getting into Buddhism and stuff, I was like, okay, get rid of desire, and also get rid of the self. And then it turns out that, okay, in a way, that's useful, but then the pendulum swings back the other way when you realize, like, oh, there's another sense in which desire is healthy, some kind of desire, and some kind of self is healthy. And in one sense of the meaning of those words, And so, yeah, like you can want things and you can want good things, but it's about not wanting things that are out of your control. Want things that are within your control, and want things which nourish you and nourish the universe. They're in balance. So, and so I think, wanting to participate in capitalism, for example, is totally cool. And it's admirable if you're trying to help people, what's wrong with that? Sitting around and being like, oh, capitalism's terrible. Now let me be a leech on society and make other people work for me. That's not so balanced, So, all right, next, religion, like say, I live in Ireland, and religion here got way out of balance, and it was all like, it's like this huge death cult kind of thing, just horrific abuses took place because no one could question the church. If you question the church even a little bit, your neighbors would all be like, oh, it's like North Korea, you'd be like, oh, well, if I don't dob you in or kind of push back, then maybe someone else who's maybe over eavesdropping is going to be like, oh yeah, Jamie didn't criticize them. He's with them, and it's going to make me look bad. So everyone's got this climate of unconscious fear, or maybe conscious sometimes. And so they're trying to, there's this moral purity and orthodoxy kind of thing, which gets stuck in place. And whereas you can't question anything, just have to believe what we're saying. And the gatekeepers to knowledge, the priesthood, they're infallible. And you have to, if they sexually abuse a few thousand or 100,000 children or whatever it is, then hey, who are you to, talk about it? Or, the mass graves and the Magdalene laundries that found, like, some church, they sold the property for developers, and they found mass unmarked graves where these women had been forced to work in the laundries because they had been promiscuous women or prostitutes, or who knows, maybe just someone else had a grudge against, and they pretended they were one of those things. Or maybe they were a political dissident or something, and maybe they were a communist, who knows? And they were sent, and they had to work in these places. And yeah, a lot of them, it seems, just died or were killed, who knows? And they were just buried. No one knew about it. Anyway, so that's just, the church went out of control. Now, but then people started to go, all right, this is nonsense. And they turned away from it, kind of riding the wave of, the 20th century kind of liberalization of culture, and, being like, oh, you can do what you want, the sexual revolution, hippie revolution, Beatles, Bob Dylan, all this stuff. And then in technology, just more in communication and stuff. And also, technology like washing machines and, the pill and all this kind of stuff. allowing women to kind of get economic power, which then kind of gave them more cultural power. So anyway, there's a lot of factors, but religion kind of waned. But then now it's like a lot of people like, oh, religion, they have a knee-jerk reaction to, oh, that's bad. But actually, what's really bad is nihilism and believing in nothing. That's very dangerous, because then you will do horrific things and like, well, it doesn't matter, does it? It's all, you know, the inevitable heat death of the universe is coming. What does it matter? You know, I'm going to enjoy, this is all an illusion, but I'm going to have the most pleasant illusion I can while I'm here. And you can say, well, why do you even care? And doesn't that show you really believe in this thing? But, you know, that's too much. People can just ignore that very easily, you know? So they've got this, nihilism is an operating system, which can allow people to live in a very horrific way, or just a very, you know, parasitic way, or a very just depressed and harmless, but just harmed way. And so, you know, religion, like believing, oh, okay, there's a creator to the universe, makes sense. For example, why did the Big Bang happen exactly when it happened? Like, that's, like I've said before, you know, if you know, count, if we could know exactly how many hours the universe has been around, we know in years, it's meant to be what, 14.3 billion years or something since the Big Bang. Okay, you know, how many hours is that? Okay, how many days is that? We could find out in 24-hour periods, right? So therefore, what day was did the Big Bang happen on? We could find out, oh, it was like, technically it would be like 3 a.m. on a Wednesday, you know? But okay, why 3 a.m.? Why Wednesday? You know, why not Thursday? Why not Tuesday? It just happened out of nowhere. Why? Now, 50-50. It happened because of an intention, or it didn't happen because of an intention. It was intentionless. That's basically, is there a God or not? 50-50, it seems. But then if you, like, intuitively, you think about it, like the whole thing came out of nothing. I don't know. Some sort of creator seems to make sense. But whatever, you could give it a 50-50. But I think through psychedelic medicine, or like, you know, psilocybin, LSD, you know, DMT, even marijuana to some extent, these things can open you to, you know, an understanding that, oh, there's something, you know, there's this transcendental kind of love that just exists. Whether humans are here or not, it's going to be there. And so, you know, I think that's, you can, all through meditation and yoga, you can come to this, which is a more sustainable route, but I think they can dovetail, they can help each other. But, you know, it's like you can, some of these, you know, drugs or whatever, if you want to call them that, they can help you see what the goal is. You go, oh, it's something like this. It won't be exactly like this, but I had a window into this other world. And then, okay, now I can start integrating that and trying to modify myself and my behaviors and the way I am, so that I can be closer to that. And so it can give you an idea of direction. And a lot of people, something like, you know, 70% of Buddhist monks or something in, I'm not sure if it was just in America or what, but they did some survey, and like, you know, most of them, they began, their search began from psychedelics, and they were like, it kind of woke them up temporarily, and then they could, you know, they couldn't forget it. So I think they have a useful role. Anyway, that's not the point here, but the point is, so we're talking about religion, right? So you can have a direct experience of God, that God's real, I believe. And I would encourage you to explore that and see, you know, it's really amazing. And, you know, God is a big word, and you might think of some dude with a beard, but by God, I would be more just mean like you know, the awake, the aware, well, like the living universe. That the universe is alive. It's like this massive super organism, and we're all part of it. Like the one, you could call it the one, you know. So yeah, and who knows what it is ultimately, but it's like we're part of it. We are it, you know, it is us. But it's greater than us. But anyway, but even if that wasn't true, and even if it wasn't a 50-50 proposition, it's useful. Like religion provides structure, like, oh, you know, there's the creator of the universe is aware of you and loves you and wants you to follow these principles of harmony, you know, love, honesty, you know, virtue. That sounds pretty good. I mean, what's wrong with that? Like, that's better than nihilism, right? Actually having people not, you know, be selfish and parasitic upon one another. So on the face of it, actually, there's a point of balance between, extreme orthodox religion on the one hand, and dogmatism, and like do this, and and then on the other hand, like just complete nihilism and denial of any spiritual experience. And I think, in the middle is the sweet spot. So, all right, then sexuality. Okay, so it used to be like, oh, in the West, say, like, oh, extremely controlled sexuality. You can give one to the wife, just to make some babies for God, but don't enjoy it, and don't talk about it, and that's it. And it was very rigid and controlled, and people weren't allowed to dance in a sexy way or anything. You weren't allowed to express yourself like that. And then it went, okay, that's a bit much, and people should be able to be free, and okay. And so there's a sexual revolution in the 60s, and a bit earlier, some things leading up to it. Elvis's hips, changing the orbits of the planets. And then so people move towards, okay, yeah, complete openness, and you can have sex with anyone, like it's just like friendship, and maybe that could be good for some people, but it caused a lot of damage. And children growing up in these kind of communes with all these hippies who are just strung out on drugs, and everyone's having sex. A lot of the time, that it seems like the kids got damaged by that, and that perhaps if we were more spiritually mature and we're all like Buddhas, then maybe we could be doing that. But when people just start doing that out of nowhere, it seems like children are actually much more sensitive than people realized, and they need more structure than people realized. And jealousy and things like that are harder to get rid of than people thought. And so actually these structures of marriage, no sex before marriage, and no divorce, or unless it's really necessary or whatever, that it seems like maybe that was when those were taken away, it actually caused a lot of problems. So a lot of households end in a lot of marriages end in divorce, and a lot of households are broken through that. And speaking as a child of divorce, I can assure you, even when your parents are lovely people, as mine are, like there's a deep pain that comes through that, and a kind of trauma, and even if you might not be aware of it when you're younger, like you kind of realize when you're a bit older, like, oh, like imagine like mum and dad were always just together, and it's like this unified force thing, and it's like, oh, that's a really nice feeling I get without. It seems like there's the world has a stronger foundation, and so I think and then that has a lot of effects on throughout society. And fatherlessness, when there's no father around, has been linked to all kinds of crazy stuff, like increased suicides, anxiety, crime, depression, decreased health outcomes, et cetera, et cetera. So like people being, and a lot of men, commitment can be an issue for men. We're kind of hardwired to like to explore and travel, adventure, and kind of we can get a bit restless and want to conquer the new frontier, and are less, I think, biologically less. And this is something we'll get into in the next thing, talking about gender roles or gender. But like we're not, in general, the men are less interested in like child raising. Like women are, it's a bit difficult job, and women are kind of, and the scientific evidence behind what I'm saying too, more patience for the expression of negative energy from children, when they're crying and stuff, and they're more drawn to take care of infants. And so you see, if you take away these things of like norms and even laws around marriage or sex and stuff like that, then I think a lot of men just hike there. Oh, I'm out of here. They're happy to come in and have sex. There's going to be many situations where men are willing to have sex with someone, but not willing to take care of a baby with them. And under the more strict norms and laws, they weren't able to have sex with those people unless they were willing to commit to taking care of the children. And so it kind of, that wasn't, and there's many problems with the more rigid system. People who were living with people that they didn't really love, or marriages which weren't happy, or people where there's domestic violence but the people couldn't escape, all kinds of bad stuff. but there's also, you know, bad stuff where you have a whole generation of kids being raised by women and the men are God knows where, you know. And there's a balance of energies there, which is useful when you have both kind of masculine and feminine caregivers. And yeah, just not the trauma of, you know, separated parents. And also, you know, like just say, you know, you look at, say, young women, you say, you know, say some 12-year-old girl and she looks like she's trying to look 20. I kind of feel like, oh, sorry for them, you know, like there's a gracefulness and a beauty and there's a glory and there's an adventure in innocence. And, you know, you should keep that throughout your whole life. And you should allow the innocence and the naughtiness to play with each other, you know, not like that, or kind of half like that. And you know, sexuality shouldn't be everything. And it certainly, you know, has its place, and it's not meant to come in when you're like, I think, you know, just still a kid, you know. And even once, you know, you know, you're menstruating, I think like it's better, you know, it gets more complicated because, you know, the way animals are and stuff. But yeah, I think like you should kind of transition into sexuality more gradually. And the whole thing of it, yeah, you can wear like these kind of, you know, revealing outfits and stuff when you're really young. I think we shouldn't be, you know, banning that, but we shouldn't be encouraging that. And there's kind of a glorification of sex. And I feel bad for a lot of these young girls who probably, it seems, feel like to be comfortable and to be cool, the only path is to kind of, or maybe the easiest path is to kind of get into this sexualization, even if you're not having sex, but just to, you know, play around with that energy and look like that. But I think it kind of, you know, maybe is like a wasted opportunity to develop your soul and your soulfulness a bit more. And, you know, these other capacities and, you know, but, and then even in adults, you know, like people like, oh yeah, you know, soul, just, you know, going out and having fun and just, you know, that's all great. But then, you know, you can wake up and you're 40 years old and maybe your body doesn't look the same. And then maybe, you know, you'll find that you start getting lonely and maybe your options aren't the same as they were. And maybe you want children and maybe you're running out of time and there's all these things. So I think sexuality is a wonderful thing, but it needs to be in balance. And so, you know, I won't go any further onto that, but like there's a point in the middle. And I think we're in the West, we're too sexualized at the moment. So anyway, let's see. All right, then we're up to gender. So gender, or you could call sex, you know, but I'm using it in the more psychological sense, all of like perceptions and behavior. So the traditional thing, say again in the West, was like, oh, women stay at home, men go and work or go and, you know, create things or, you know, destroy things or whatever. And women, you take care of the family and do what the man wants and we're good. And obviously that's kind of a sort of enslavement of women when women are forced to do that. And so they're not allowed to experience and express themselves in many ways that men are. So, and also it kind of boxes men in as well, like into a certain identity. But then, so we moved away from that and, you know, which is a good thing, right? Progress, opening up. So, okay, you know, hey, you can be a woman and you can have a career. You can even lead a country and you can be a man and you can just want to hang out at home and with the kids or whatever. Like, that's okay. We won't judge you. We will encourage you to, you know, that might be the place where you can do the most good for the world. And so that's great. But then there's this thing where it started to be like, oh, but if you say most women want to do that, then, oh, that's kind of weird. Why are you saying that? You know, but it's true. Most women are more interested in like a kind of social dynamics and like love and just kind of family and this kind of stuff. And most men are more, you know, they're interested in that, of course, but are more interested in things and kind of problem solving and kind of creating things. And this is hardwired into us from, you know, millions of years of biological evolution where roles separated between males and females. And we see it in other animals, you know, and we don't call, you know, the lions sexist. It's just how they are. But we need to understand that that's just how we are on a certain level, that we're interested. And, you know, animals, lions, you know, there's a certain domination there for sure. But you know, they've done studies where, like say in Nordic countries, they've got the most, as I understand it, there's the most encouragement of, hey, just do whatever you want. You know, there's the most kind of the focus on trying not to culturally program people to have a gender role. And that's when people have maximum freedom to do what they want. Actually, it exacerbates the differences in occupations. So women are even more dominant in the fields of teaching and caring and that kind of stuff. And men are even more dominant in, like, you know, engineering and science and whatever, or dangerous jobs where you could lose your arm, you know. So it seems like actually when people talk about the gender pay gap and stuff, it's actually an illusion. And because at least in the West, like in the, well, let's say the Anglosphere at least, where there's anti-discrimination laws for one thing, but also it's just men are more willing to pick up and leave town, leave their social network and just go leave town to get a job. They're more willing to do dangerous jobs. They're more willing to do like just kind of uncomfortable work. And a lot of the the things that society needs the most, where basically where there's the smallest supply of people who can solve the problem, those industries often are things where it relates to complex problem solving, where male brains, the way they're structured, are more drawn to and fascinated with compared to female brains. And there's always going to be masculine females and feminine males, right? But there is such a thing as differences. And this is where people might think, oh, Jamie's gone wild here. But no, it's like there's testosterone, say when the XX chromosome or XY, you know, so there's a difference there. And when if you have XX chromosomes, you're a woman, a female, and even in the womb, there's a for XY for males, in the womb there's a release of testosterone, which causes a severing of the hemispheres in the brain. I mean, they remain connected to some extent, but they're less connected than the female brain. So, you know, that's a very fundamental thing, and that's just one thing. And there's bone density, you know, male bones are stronger, denser. Muscle fiber works different. It's you're able to have more power per, you know, inch of muscle, you know, and things like during adolescence, there's another cascade of hormones which come in, you know, the sex hormones, and they guide behavior. And, you know, I believe we're all souls, so we're not just the body, but your soul is interfacing, like, you know, I don't know, but I could easily have been a woman in my previous lifetime or something, you know, but in this lifetime, I'm in a male body, so my soul is interfacing with male psychology, and that's cool. You know, it's wonderful, but it's just how it is. But both are very useful. You know, the specialization in economy is very useful. Not everyone is, you know, growing food and making, you know, crafts and, you know, whatever, you know, protecting their property. So, you know, we have police who are specialized in protection. We have, you know, people who are specialized in making stuff. We have people who specialize in growing food, and they can trade, and through money, they don't need to barter anymore. And so we're doing the same amount of work, but the quality of the goods is better for everyone because we're specializing, we're focusing. And so that's the same with men and women. We're doing that. There's these different aspects of this continuum of psychology. And so I think it's a wonderful thing. It's an amazing system. But pointing this out could be viewed. So I think basically the extreme that we've gone to is thinking that there is no difference between men and women. Or even going even further and thinking there is no such thing as men and women, and, you know, gender is just a social construct and it's whatever you want. And, you know, I have sympathy for people with that point of view, because I think ultimately it's true that we are not men or women. We are souls, which are genderless. It's just the universe. The universe is just, you know, it's consciousness. It's just reality. You know, it's neither gender or it's both genders, you know. Or you could say every single soul in the universe is a different gender in a way. It's just your soul. You're a different ray of light of, you know, the sun that is God, you know, if you want to put it in those terms. But basically, the body is male or female. And so I think that's where I feel like the trans thing is a kind of not helpful, unfortunately. And you have to be honest about these things, you know. I don't mean to hurt anyone, but I think it's hurtful if we're not honest. And someone can disagree with me, and I'll try my best not to get hurt by them thinking that I'm crazy or that my views are inaccurate. And I wish them the best in equally doing the same thing as me and trying not to get hurt by the fact that I don't believe in their way of looking at things. You know, so thinking gender is whatever you wanted it to be, or you know, that there is no such thing as gender. I think that's gone too far. Or that there is gender, male and female, but it doesn't really matter. We're all the same. And so I think, no, you have to be honest and look at the evidence and just, you know, logically you know, kind of like the intuition or common sense, you know, like look at us, look at the way we live. You know, it's obvious that there's a point in the middle. And I think it's like it's okay to give blue to boys and pink to girls, and to kind of encourage them. You know, naturally boys are going to want to fight and play with soldiers and stuff more than girls will. Girls will a bit, but less than boys. And girls are going to want to play with dolls and, you know, play house and stuff more than boys. And that's fine. We shouldn't be, oh my God, they're getting socially brainwashed. It's like, no, that's just natural. And there's biological reasons for it, specialization of the genders or the sexes. But also, even, you know, think about, like, say me, I used to be kind of, I would say, too feminine, not masculine enough. And it was difficult for me. It wasn't good for romance. I can tell you, you know, times when basically I reassessed. I was like, why didn't that work? It was going great. And then like, I was basically too much of, I wasn't a man enough, you know? You're like, oh, that's, you know, can you say that these days? Yeah, there's such a thing as not being enough of a man, you know, in certain situations. And, oh, your country gets invaded and you run away. Not so good. Or someone is being, you know, saying offensive things to your girlfriend, and you don't come to her aid when she's really maybe getting very uncomfortable and anxious, and you're just like, oh, let's get out of here, and you look a bit uncomfortable yourself. Then maybe she's like, can this guy even, you know, try to keep the other men away from me? You know, isn't that part of what the deal, you know? But you know, that brings up a whole other can of worms or another topic. So I think, say and then there's women who would love to be, you know, wearing the high heels and dresses and stuff, and, you know, now and then being able to play with their, you know, put on their feminine side, but who don't feel comfortable with that. And they feel like, oh no, I don't look good, or, oh no, I can't do that. And, you know, so maybe they'll settle for a kind of tomboy thing. But actually they have a longing to express the feminine. And so I think it would be wonderful if we can all express both sides. But I think it is useful for children to start with, okay, let's focus on your home gender, you know, like, okay, you're a boy. All right, let's see if we can make you masculine, you know, and develop the masculine. Girl, we'll develop the feminine. But all along the way, we will be exposing you to the other side and then letting you know, yeah, it's fine to, you know, boys want to play with dolls, cool, do it. Girls want to play with soldiers, cool, go for it. But like that, life is complicated enough without the adults kind of trying to project onto children and being like, oh no, we'll help you by, you know, giving the boys dolls and the girls soldiers. And it's like, okay, look, just, you know, there's a certain natural, you know, things being built upon other things, and we can start with a simple foundation, and then kind of once that's there, we can start to experiment with more. So anyway, I think that's I'm trying to get out there. It's a very complicated topic, but a point of balance is somewhere in the middle regarding like the gender roles, you know. And I think it should be like, yeah, people, you can do whatever you want, but we shouldn't be shocked if men act masculine and women act feminine in general. So right, then we've got, okay, what are my acronyms here to remember this? My across the acronym. Yeah. So then we have, oh yeah, KIT. All right, cool. So kindness, yeah, like you can be kind of like I guess where I was mentioning a bit about the masculine thing, like you can be too kind, like you're people pleasing, and then it's not actually kind to the other people, because you're encouraging people to go too far and to be out of balance and become tyrants. So that's not good. But also, you know, it's not good for you, and you're one of the people. So we should try to maximize well-being for everyone, including yourself. And also, it's just not genuine. You know, if you always say, if you can't say no, then your yes is meaningless, you know. But if you have the ability to say no and you say yes to someone, then that's kind of like, oh, that's a much more high value thing, isn't it? You're really agreeing. You're not just submitting, you know. So, but kindness, it's great to be kind to people. And I think we've come from a barbaric place in the past where there wasn't enough kindness. And then we've moved towards, more being friendly and stuff and all that. But then with a lot of people, especially in the West, I think you have the case where people struggle with setting boundaries, and, they're like, I'm being so kind, but why doesn't it feel right? And why isn't, things, it's causing problems. And I think it's like, you need to have it in balance. And actually, if they're crossing a line, the kind thing is actually to calmly, without judgment, just say, hey, no, you can't do that. You need to go back to that side of the line. And if they don't, then you go, hey, look, I said you have to go back to the other side of the line. This is why you're entering my space here. Not necessarily physical, and there will be consequences if you don't listen to me. And then they go, oh shit, what situation I walk into? So back away, not today, disco, right? And then they'll actually go, yeah, oh, okay, I should pay more attention to people's boundaries, if only so I don't get into trouble. And so that's good to have people paying more attention to each other's boundaries, because boundaries are needed. It's necessary, and for all beings. You have the right to your own space, and the right to your own wife, or the right to your own husband, or the right to your own house, or whatever, your own food, your own life. So you can't be like, oh, the murderer is allowed to kill people because there's no such thing as boundaries. Well, no, there are boundaries, there should be an appropriate boundary. So yeah, finding, and, like I said, I was kind of people pleasing back in the day. And then I came to see the need to be able to be more masculine at times and more, set boundaries, and not to need to be making people happy, and to be able to complain when need be, or say very direct things, or, hurt people if it's in the service of a greater healing, So, okay, that's kindness. So independence, I think people used to be extremely dependent on, you do what the tribe tells you, and you do what the church tells you, and you do what your family tells you, yada, 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 or your husband or whatever. And then, we've become much more individualistic and kind of independence minded, especially again in the West. And that's great. Freedom is a wonderful thing. But I think we need to remember that we are social creatures, and we have responsibilities to each other. It's not all rights and entitlement, like we owe things to each other. And so independence is meaningless if we don't nourish other human beings, and if we're not in balance and harmony. I think harmony is a higher virtue than independence. And harmony actually involves an extremely high level of independence. But that independence, is in balance with, service to the whole. So, a cell which is just thinking about itself and its own growth and opportunities is called cancer, and so we shouldn't be cancers in a family or in a society, and countries shouldn't be a cancer on the earth, and etc. And so, yeah. And if the if the planet keeps acting like a cancer and does, tries to spread beyond Earth, some celestial, transdimensional doctor might try to, remove us. So let's be harmonious. But yeah, but independence. So, and, say you're like, oh, I want to be independent. I don't want to do what my family tells me. Well, there's a benefit to not living someone else's life, but also, yeah, you should try to think about others and take care of others. And also, they might actually know best in some situations. So you should not just do the opposite of what your parents tell you, but you should also not just do whatever they tell you. You should try to process it yourself and make your own decisions, and what makes sense to you. Listen to everyone, but at the end of the day, you make your own decisions based on your own understanding of what makes sense. But when you're younger, you should keep in mind that older people could know things which you'll only realize 10 years down the line. So, there is a place for parental, authority. So let's see. And yeah, a similar aspect of the independence thing would be, say, well, with, the state and the government, where kind of oddly in the opposite direction, the government has become more and more controlling and invasive in our lives. Whereas it used to be, the state basically didn't pay you any attention. Yeah, they would maybe tax you, But then, in certain societies, there was no tax, like say the USA, no income tax for like a large amount of its history when it was very, very successful economically. So you could keep the fruits of your labor, but you have to work hard. The government's not going to give you anything. You have to earn it. But that was very successful. So I'd say that's libertarianism from my point of view, like, or classical liberalism, or a kind of point of limited government. Basically, the government enforces the non-aggression principle. It protects an individual's life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, property. Basically, you and your property, is protected, and government doesn't give you much else. I'd say something like that is a balance point, because when the government was giving us nothing, maybe that was a bit extreme. Well, I mean, I guess you could say, yeah, because they would leave us alone, that would be good. But then maybe you could say, they weren't enforcing the law enough, lawlessness or whatever, but I guess that's more complicated. But basically, like socialism being extreme, the government, I'd say, you can make a reasonable case that a very limited amount of government support, like safety nets and stuff, is reasonable because in a society where there's not enough community for people to take care of each other. So if the society is not socially or spiritually healthy enough, then a state can come in to try to help. But then there's the danger that it's like a crutch, and the people will get used to it, and then it'll be crippling ultimately. Just like if you always use a crutch and you don't try to use your legs and relearn to walk. So I think less dependence on the government would be a point of balance for us. But people go, oh, but remember the old days when your building could burn down, and if you hadn't paid for the firefighters, then you were just out of luck. But I think, like, okay, even if that isn't an accurate assessment of those times, and I'm not sure if it is, say, the USA back in the day, but then nonetheless, I think there's a point in the middle. And so the pendulum has swung too far towards, let the government provide everything. But then to do that, it can't make money, it has to take it from the private sector. So it has to take our money, and then with one hand, they give it back with the other. And often in the process, there's corruption, there's, just incompetence, people who, they don't have the fire under their ass of like, oh, you could go broke. That's scary. That keeps people awake at night, and it forces them to pay attention to constant diligence and evolution to an extent that most people just can't do without that pressure, unless they're highly spiritually evolved, and they don't need it. But so I think, for these reasons, there's a lot of reason to think the greater independence from the government would also be a point of balance. All right. T. So truth. There's this point back in the day, it's like, okay, this is the truth. What I believe is the truth, and everyone else is crazy. And then everyone else says the same thing. And no one's like, hey, I'm noticing a pattern. We're all kind of similar, doing the same thing. From their point of view, they must think they've got the objective truth, and I'm wrong. So how do I know that I'm not one of them if I have the same logic as them? But then, so that's, useful to go, oh yeah, wait a minute. Okay, so I should, try to understand other people's point of view, and understand that there's a natural instinct to keep things simple. And, animals, it's like, if it works, if it's not broken, don't fix it. If it works, just keep doing it. And so animals can fall into these niches where they just, these grooves. And so, once, you've formed a kind of worldview, often it just solidifies and fossilizes. And it's hard to shake it, to change it. But as we grow more conscious, this becomes possible. And so, but then we've gone too far where we were like, oh, there's no such thing as truth. Everyone's got their own truth, So it's not like I have objective truth and you're all crazy. It's like, no, I don't have objective truth, and neither do any of you. None of us do. But no, actually, there is an objective truth, but it's just that none of us have it. It's like there is a landscape, but none of our maps, I'm drawing maps of the landscape through language, basically language is trying to paint a picture of the way things are, what is and what should be, description and prescription. And basically I'm doing that and you're doing that and everyone's doing that, and different, cultures are doing that in general. My maps and all the members of, say, Australian or Irish or Western culture will have similar maps which are different to each other, but they're all much more similar than they are to, say, Chinese maps in general, or Japanese maps, or maps from someone from Lesotho in general. There's going to be a lot of crossover, but there will be a lot of differences, and different parts of the world, cultures will share more similarity within their understanding of what the terrain looks like. But we all have different maps, but we're all describing the same terrain. It's just, so there's only one world, there's only one geography, but there are countless maps. And so that's like truth. Truth does not live in words. Words are an expression of truth, but it's like, but truth based, if I think the easiest way to understand what I would say truth is, this point of balance, is that the universe is truth. The physical universe, which turns out to be made of energy, which turns out to be made of consciousness, which turns out to be made of meaning, or whatever, who God only knows, literally. But we could say, yeah, the physical universe, like 3D space, the whole universe, every infinity, that is truth. All our words, they're not truth, they're just maps. So I have my truth, my best attempts at truth, and truthfulness, personality orientation and disposition to seek the eternal clarification of perspective and truth, and an extreme enthusiasm for noticing one's own illusions and contradictions between one's different ideas, and to not at all be attached to your perspectives and your ideas, to be constantly willing to be flexible and to modify them when presented with evidence which shows that they are less likely than other maps or other descriptions. So I think, yeah, that's the point of balance, is to kind of understand there is this one truth and we're all describing it in different ways, but you can't just say, oh, you have your truth, I have mine, so I don't need to listen to you. It's like, well, no, like there's only one truth. And we might not be able to understand, the deeper levels of truth at all, ever. Might be beyond us. Like, what does an ant know about humans? What do humans know about the universe? But there very often will be many situations where someone's like, hey, I think it's fine, to get married to 6-year-olds. It's just cool. And then you can go, no, that's not okay for these reasons. And then we have to talk about it to try to figure out like what is reasonable. And that's obviously a very extreme example. But there are many, many, milder examples. But that will just be to make the case to get the agreement. Like, yeah, there are cases where there's only one right thing that should be happening. Or like, yeah, we are on, our planet is called Earth in English. True or false? True. You're like, no, that's not true. That's your point of view. It's like, no, man, like, come on. You're like, so, all right. So there's 7 things where I think, the pendulum of truth, of balance, can kind of go from one side to the other, and we should always be aware, like, where am I exactly and where am I heading, and to try to bring that pendulum to balance in as many aspects of life as possible. And a lot of them we'll be working on simultaneously. And yeah, enjoy riding that pendulum, my friends. That's it for now. Goodbye.